When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Within the gaming world, there are your general gamers, but then there are those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming. If you're one of those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming, we certainly got the place to send you. Scorpion Lair Games. That's right, Scorpion Lair Games is the creators of the true crime hit Killers, the card game. Let's not forget they also have Killers Clothing Company, their profiler game, and things like the 5-Minute Murder channel on YouTube. And we certainly can't forget the new book that is certainly a hit, Beyond the Headliners, True Crimes, Myths, and Legends. Make sure you visit Jeff and the Scorpion Lair Games on Facebook and everywhere today. Also want to give a quick thank you to our friends over at Ultra Pro, who is the leading manufacturer and supplier of sports, comics, and memorabilia storage. Whether it be card cases, sleeves, top loaders, or travel gear, you name it. We are also going to be working with Ultra Pro in the next few months to do some special giveaway packages for the holiday season coming up in a few months, so stay tuned. Make sure you check them out at ultrapro.com.
This is the manager of champions, the champion of managers, Pollo Del Mar, and you are listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, childrens of all ages. And looking forward to speaking with this gentleman. You have heard him in different incarnations, I'll say, on the show before and a charity event. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes and in front of the camera of the NWA. And I had an opportunity, thanks to this gentleman, to attend NWA 76 at the 2300 Arena. But let's go ahead and say hello to not only the editor-in-chief of NWA Official Wrestling magazine, and he is also the digital interface manager for the NWA. His name, Paul Pratt. Paul, how the hell are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. And, you know, I want to get this, I think I may have told you on air before, but I want to just let the audience, because I like to do full disclosure.
Of course.
And, you know, it's funny that I first got introduced to Paul during one of our marathon charity events, thanks to Mark. Mark K, I love you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. I know you've recently had a birthday. But right off the bat, Paul, when he, can I say, I don't want to be disrespectful of the gimmick and stuff.
No,
okay.
Of course.
All right. So Paul had came
you're
on.
Talking about Miss Pollo Del Mar.
Yes.
The lovely and talented. Yeah.
Oh, the manager, champions, the whole bit. So Pollo had come on the charity event, and it was funny. It was day 3 of 4 days, and I was kind of dragging at that point. Nobody's fault, but Pollo came in with such energy.
Dragging at that point too.
Yeah, but well, that wow. I opened myself up for that one, but so Pollo comes in firing with this energy and everything you would see with Pollo, and it was called me on the carpet. I said so. It wasn't stupid, but it was like kind of what I just did there. It was like Pollo hit me with all fire and gave me the energy I needed to go through the next 2 days. And ever since then, Paul or Pollo, I'll bounce back and forth. And I texted this to Paul last night when we agreed on a time and such. And I want to thank you publicly, and I wouldn't say this publicly if I wouldn't say it privately to you. And anyway, the gist of the text was that I really appreciate you as a person, Pollo, the character, just the whole 9 yards. And I wouldn't say because I mean it, but ever since we first connected, I really appreciate it and have such respect for you both personally and professionally, just because of the conversations we've had on and off air. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things I think that any performer specifically, you know, talking from that perspective, any performer learns over the course of a career is that we're not going to appeal to everybody. You know, there is no character that appeals to 100% of the demographic audience. So rather than worrying about those people who are not comfortable with me or not enthused about my character or not interested in what I bring to the world of professional wrestling, I have the opportunity and ability to focus on those who celebrate what I do. And I celebrate those who celebrate me. And it's a good thing, especially if you represent any kind of a marginalized community or a community that is underrepresented, as I do, to find people who support you. And I appreciate you and all the support you've given over the years. And
the thing is, too, and I have no problem admitting this, and part of it was I trust Mark, rightfully so, because Mark is a pro's pro. But, you know, obviously I knew the name Pollo Del Mar, but never interacted or seen you live at the time. And it was, yeah, Mark, sure, it'll be something different. Why not? I go in blind faith and stuff, and obviously gotten to know you and learn about the character and everything else over the years since. But there's just an appreciation there from me, and I want to say publicly what I've said to you time and time again privately.
Well, yeah, I love the fact that there's so much misgiving at times about the character that I represent. You know, I portray a very standard and traditional wrestling archetype. And what trips people up is that I do it in a way that they haven't seen it before. And traditionally, I would think that that would be celebrated in wrestling. And most often it is. But there are a lot of people who take issue with it because their personal beliefs politicize a character that I portray on television or at live events. And if they were to look a little more closely, there's very little politicization of my person or specifically that character. And as it relates to any company I work with, because my job is to entertain. My job is not specifically to educate. It is not to influence or inform people's politics. That is all stuff that I keep out of my professional life, because if I were to go into an office environment and be promoting any of those things specifically, it would be really frowned upon. And I try to do the same with my professional wrestling career. It doesn't mean, of course, that I don't have my own beliefs, and that those who get to know me at a deeper level than what they would see on television or interact with me will not get an earful about those things. But that's a different kind of interaction than just strictly on-air talent.
And I'll say this, and we're not going to go totally deep dive with that stuff, but I will say, and I'm not saying this because I know Paul and have gotten to know Paul, with what you said there, if you ask Paul a question, he will give you a straight answer from his opinion, which I appreciate.
That's because I feel that reflects on my integrity as a person.
Yeah, exactly. But before we'll bounce around a little bit, but I want to start with a couple key things with the NWA, which I found kind of cool recently. And first and foremost, NWA, I should mention, has now a home base at a PBS studio down in Florida. So how did this come about, and what can you say about that currently?
Sure. We had a home base previously, which was Skyway Studios in Nashville, Tennessee, and we recorded there for quite some time. And before that, if people remember, we were based in Atlanta when Power launched at the beginning of the Lightning One era. So we've always had various home bases, but we started working in the Tampa area. A lot of our talent is based there in the Southeast. So you'll see a lot of Nashville or Tennessee-based stuff, Georgia-based stuff, Florida-based stuff, because our talent do live closer to there. But one of the things that was super appealing to us about that WEDU studio in Tampa is that it is a long-time storied location for recording professional wrestling. And the National Wrestling Alliance has always had a historical seat in the Florida territory system. So for us, it was a very comfortable fit. Plus, the studio is incredible. It allows us, we built a set specific for it, which looks phenomenal on television. I do hope that people check out NWA Power Tuesday, 6:05 p.m. Eastern time, and see the set. So we're evolving with the times, but that studio is very comfortable fit for us, and they treat us very well. And that's really important as well.
Well, speaking of Power, and I haven't seen updates because of how nuts things have been, but you guys were for a long time on the CW app and such with Power, but where are you doing a show and releasing a show now? Because obviously there's been some business transactions. Obviously NXT is on CW, the network now, and just a lot of juggling pieces. So where can people catch Power at 6:05 Eastern now?
You can tune in to NWA Power live on X, formerly Twitter, at the National Wrestling Alliance's Twitter account. We are posting full episodes of all of the recordings done at NWA 76 at the sold-out 2300 Arena in Philadelphia. So we're in week 3 of 5 that are going to be guaranteed to be available worldwide on X, and then more plans will be announced as they are available.
Right on. And here's the thing with NWA, which I appreciate, and it was kind of around the same thing you were saying about the politics and stuff. And like I said, we're not going to go there, but the NWA has always operated in smaller venues, and especially in a lot of red states, the Bible Belt and the South, and just everything else like that. So do you notice when you're in these small arenas and towns and all that you're getting the same reaction as a company that you would back in the day in the previous territory system?
I think that one of the beautiful things about the NWA National Wrestling Alliance fan base is that many of our fans are longtime NWA fans. They've supported the NWA in some cases since it was on TBS back at the height of Jim Crockett Promotions and even prior. And some of them are newer, and they discovered NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, prior to the Lightning One era and came out to support those smaller independent wrestling shows that continued to run throughout the Southeast largely and the Southern states. That has always been our bread and butter. And it goes back and harkens back to the eras prior to international broadcasting, before the advent of cable television or satellite television or things that brought a singular pro wrestling product to a global audience. Our fan base is steeped in those, roots of Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Florida Championship Wrestling, and the wrestling organizations throughout Texas, Mid-South, in Oklahoma, world-class championship wrestling. So a lot of our fans extend all the way back to that. But I think that one of the beautiful parts specifically about going to smaller towns that are not accustomed to, they're not inundated by entertainment events. So when a National Wrestling Alliance live event or a signature live event comes to town, it's exciting for them. And they show up because they want to have a good time. They want to participate. They want to interact with the fans. They want to interact with the talent. And the talent loves that and feeds off that energy. So I guess in short, the question to answer is, yeah, I feel that we see a lot of that is still reminiscent of the old days. But a big part of it, though, Jonathan, is that experiencing the National Wrestling Alliance live in a smaller or more intimate venue is an entirely different experience than some of the competitors, where you're, in the nosebleed seats, quite literally, and watching more of the action on a jumbotron or a projection than you are able to witness it live and up close. We give that experience, and I love that about us.
Absolutely. And I guess the other major news topic with the NWA that I want to bring up, and I saw this in an email press release yesterday, was you were talking about the Burke Invitational. Is that, and I know this is probably a stupid question, but is that based off Mildred Burke?
Of course, it's named after National Wrestling Alliance Women's World Wrestling Champion and legend Mildred Burke. It's named in her honor. And we celebrate our history, legacy, and tradition at the National Wrestling Alliance. So when we wanted to kind of cultivate an event that would celebrate the women of wrestling today, and remember, this is an event that crowns the new #1 contender to the women's world title, currently held by Kenzie Page, and it's going to guarantee the winner of this event an opportunity to face her. So it's really offering somebody an opportunity to step into a position where they would be potentially comparable to a legend like Mildred Burke. So it's a launching pad for future legends.
And the thing is, this was the first time I got to see the NWA live. And I actually brought somebody with me who is strictly WWE. So I was glad to introduce a new product to them, to widen their scope as far as a wrestling show. And I got a kick out of seeing Mims, who thanks to you, I was fortunate enough to talk to, and you can go back in the archive and see that.
That was a great interview. Mims is so well-spoken. A little bit aggressive, a little bit of a jerk in the ring, but very well-spoken.
Absolutely. I got a kick and thought he was, like you said, very well-spoken. And we even talked a little off-air. And, good dude. I'm happy to see him. He just recently won a championship on TV, correct?
He did. He is the new NWA national champion. A little bit nefarious means, and I, on my social media, on my Twitter account, suggested strongly that William Patrick Corgan, the president of the National Wrestling Alliance, review the end of that match. But nevertheless, the victory stands. Mims, the new national heavyweight champion.
Absolutely. But I got a kick out seeing Mims in person. There was a couple other people we'll have down the line. Obviously, things have been affected by the storms in the South, and hope everybody who hears this is recovering well from that stuff. But we'll have those episodes when we can. But I'm thinking about the other character that really stood out for me. And it was one of those, I've heard about this character and seen like YouTube clips and stuff like that, but was the first time seeing in person was Max the Impaler, who was working with James Mitchell, who everybody knows is a legendary manager through the business and such. But I can't pinpoint it, but what is it that you hear and find that people find so appealing about Max the Impaler? Because I liked it. I guess I could say I liked it because it was different, if it makes it, that makes sense.
It absolutely does make sense. And first and foremost, I can't speak highly enough of Max the Impaler. Max, in incredible talent, so very, very unique. And in many ways, I relate in terms of my character presentation of my own wrestling career to what Max is doing. Max is offering up a very tried and true character archetype. Max has been inspired by many of the greats over the years, the Stan Hansens, the Bruiser Brodies, the Big Van Vaders. And so there is a presentational element of that reflected in their persona, their in-ring work. What makes it so special is that character is not done very often these days. And secondarily, it's being done in a way that nobody's ever seen. The gender non-conforming, the gender non-binary type of individual, this is an entirely masculine character archetype that we've seen over the years. Very few people have broken that mold. I would say that Awesome Kong did some elements of it. Aja Kong did some of it in Japan. And of course, Max travels extensively in Japan. So they are able to really hone this character in regions and territories that have always celebrated and presented this specific character archetype at the very top of the card. So they're getting a lot of influence and benefit from that too. Max as our world television champion, extremely imposing.
And like you said, and I should have thought about that as a wrestling purist, I guess, and historian and such, about the physicality, like you said, of a Vader, a Stan Hansen, etc. That makes perfect sense. Once you said that, it clicked in my head going, that fits. But
the thing about
sorry.
The thing about any talent in the world of wrestling is we all predominantly grow up watching wrestling, right, as fans. And there are characters that we gravitate to. There are performers we've gravitated towards and fell in love with as a fan. And then if you are fortunate enough, and I would say diligent enough to pursue professional wrestling as a career, you can begin to sort of inform your own character based on those characters of the past. I remember in your Mims conversation, you had that conversation with him. Who has influenced you? Who do you incorporate elements of in your presentation? So the thing that is really groundbreaking in many ways about Max and made them an unlikely star in the United States is that their influences were entirely male. And, quite often we would want to emulate that with which we most identify with. In my case, same thing. I was heavily influenced by Sherry Martel, and quite clearly, I'm not a Sherry Martel. So
who is though?
Yeah, of course, who is, and that is what makes Sherry Martel's performances over the years so genius. There was nobody even among her peers at the time that could replicate that. But when we get to see somebody like a Max doing what they're doing, it is truly something we're familiar with, but we've never seen it that way. And sometimes the lack of familiarity causes real discomfort for some people.
Absolutely. Speaking of discomfort, whether it's Pollo Del Mar, Max the Impaler, and everything else, because there are some parts of the country, unfortunately, that politicize things. And I mentioned about the NWA in smaller venues and sometimes in these red states, Bible Belt, all that stuff. Or if you guys take independent bookings and such, do you try to avoid going to certain spots if you can because of this essential hate? You love the heat, and hey, bring it on, baby.
Correct.
You bring it on, baby. Let's go.
I can't speak for Max, but first of all, I would have to acknowledge that I'm always surprised at, no matter where I go, there is a very supportive audience of people who love what I do. And I think that probably is shocking for some to hear if I don't align with whatever their own beliefs are. And And that's fine, and people are entitled to their beliefs. In terms of what I'm able to present, I usually am a heel. So whatever can fuel that emotion for people, I'm okay with. The only time I'm not okay with it is, and I believe this to be true no matter who you are, there are certain things that as an audience member, you should not use in terms of terminology and the way you interact with people. You don't have to like them, but there's slurs and things like that that are just not acceptable. And that goes across, it's for, I hear it towards the women where people are catcalling them and sexualizing them in ways that are really inappropriate. I hear that for people of color who may, depending on where they're at, get certain responses. And I certainly hope that as a society, we've grown past that. You do not have to support me as a person to respond in a way that is appropriate for the venue and the time and the setting.
Yeah, because speaking of that, towards the end of the night of NWA 76, it was EC3 and Thomas fighting for the title. And there was I don't know if you heard it, there was folks near me where I was sitting, some of those negative catcalls, and I'm like, oh shit, like this could get, what I mean? We're in South Philly and stuff. It's like, this could get ugly quickly. But luckily, everything's cool. Fans like, dude, shut up, and kind of put this person in their place, which I was glad to see. It didn't go farther than that.
That's one of the incredible things I do think of. It's one of the incredible things that I think happens sometimes is that audiences will police themselves. When one individual gets out of hand, there are always people around them that are just like that. I don't have to do much. I very seldom had to protect myself. And and I don't mean physically, I mean in terms of retaliating to something that's truly inappropriate. The funniest thing is people would always assume those terrible things have happened in, some southern state, like you've mentioned or whatever, where we so often as the NWA tour, but that's never been my experience. Like, my experience has been that I've experienced some of the nastiest things said to me that were more personal than they were professional in places where I was least expecting it. And it always catches me off guard because, number one, I don't go to places expecting that. I don't live my life from a place of victimhood or expecting that in general. But when you are in a place where it seems very unlikely, your guard is even lowered. So, yeah, that's been my experience, oddly enough.
But, let's go a little positive back with the NWA. I mentioned in the introduction about being in charge of the digital interface and obviously the digital magazine and such. So, and for people who don't know, obviously we talked about this in both the live event and the regular interview with Pollo, but you have a background in communication. So in my head, it fits that you're doing this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But, like that makes sense to me. It's not a surprise, but you wear many hats. So what does it entail as far as the digital interface manager and everything you're doing behind the scenes?
Everyone, by the way, in the National Wrestling Alliance tends to wear many hats. It's not a huge conglomerate. This is a small project that's driven by passion by handsfuls of individuals rather than, a huge corporate structure. So everyone does many things. The digital interface element of my job specifically is, November of last year, it was agreed upon by William Patrick Corgan. Billy and I sat down and talked about some changes he was really interested in seeing with the website. And my history includes, I was editor-in-chief of a fairly major magazine in Northern California for a number of years. I've contributed and written for multitudes of publications around the world. I was a journalist and an entertainment columnist and contributor for Huffington Post for 7 years before going back into the world of wrestling. And that's actually what led me back into wrestling. So there were so many facets of things that I wanted to do with the NWA website. Previously, it was a great source for information when we were coming to town, how to buy our tickets, where to watch our show. But through the last year or so, we have really built out the depth of the website, including the magazine, including lots of really character-driven stories. Even our press releases lean into characters and developing our characters and our talent as characters for audiences. And now it serves not as a place, the website, meaning it serves not as a place for people to just come once a month to check up on things. You can legitimately go to nationalwrestlingalliance.com daily to find updates, whether that's visual updates or news releases, new announcements of various territory promotions, results from our territory shows. There's so much that's going on in the National Wrestling Alliance, and I really wanted our website to be a one-stop shop to find out everything. You can fall down, if you're somebody like me who tends to fall down like a Wikipedia rabbit hole, you can fall down an NWA rabbit hole. I just said wabbit. You can fall down an NWA rabbit hole by going to nationalwrestlingalliance.com. There's now 6 issues of our magazine. There are dozens and dozens of press releases that chronicle achievements and accomplishments by our talent that help to build out things that are going on air and off. It's a great source of information, and I'm really proud of it.
So, which leads me to Pollo, because I'm not going to keep you too long. You got such a busy and hectic schedule. I was actually a little disappointed in Philly. I was hoping to be able to see Pollo live and in action in ring. So, obviously, leads to me asking, when are we going to see you on Power again? When are we going to see you on TV, on the road as Pollo?
That's a fantastic question. When it comes to the National Wrestling Alliance, I don't have an answer for that. I do know that opportunities get floated periodically, and when the right opportunity, time, and talent to partner me with, remember, I am a manager, so I can't just be there for the sake of being there. It has to be somebody that makes sense for me to be with. My real skill set as a professional wrestling talent, as a manager, the manager of champions, the champion of managers, is to take somebody who's already an incredible talent and make them undeniable. I would look at, for example, Silas Mason, who is hands down one of our absolute top talents, recently signed a nice long contract with the National Wrestling Alliance, former national champion, a member of the Southern Six, somebody who has all the skills in the world, but there was something so unique and special about our partnership that it made him undeniable. So for me to come back to Power, which is something I definitely want, I missed that element of participation with the National Wrestling Alliance, but Billy Corgan, the NWA, and I are all looking for the right opportunity, the right moment to do that, and the right talent is required. So when that comes along, I'll be back on Power. If until that time, those who want to see the manager of champions, the champion of managers, Pollo Del Mar, I travel coast to coast. I've got shows throughout California. Hopefully, we'll be having a series of shows coming up in Florida pretty soon, and much more. So you can always follow me on my socials to see where you can catch me as the character, as the manager of champions, the champion of managers.
Well, I'm going to be in California in the next couple of weeks. I'm just waiting to book the trip. So I'm hoping I'm in your area during the time to see you perform. But let's put, as far as the NWA is concerned, let's put our creative cap on. Who would you see yourself with when you look at the layout of what's going on NWA wise?
That's a tough one because everybody right now is pretty deeply entrenched in their own stories. Each of our characters have, pretty phenomenal on-screen rivalries. Many of them have been going on for years. We look at Tom and EC3, who are going to be facing each other in the main event of Samhain 2, now at WEDU Studios in Tampa on the 26th of October. That is only one of numerous feuds that have been ongoing. I think that I do think that there's some characters that would be really fun to work with. I love the It Girls, Ella and Samantha Miss Star, Ella Envy, one of our up-and-coming women's tag teams. I think they would be incredibly fun to work with. Tiffany Nieves, I think, would be an outstanding talent. She has such a bright future. And I can't help but notice that after the outcome of the Kinsey Page and Max the Impaler world title match, there was some discord between the Sinister Minister and Max the Impaler, which we saw unveiled on NWA social media. So perhaps the unstoppable beast of Max the Impaler needs the, undeniable beauty of Pollo Del Mar to soothe their beastly soul. I don't know. There's a lot of people I think would be very fun to work with.
And final question for you, and thank you for the time again. And make sure you guys all check out nationalwrestlingalliance.com to get all the updates. There's daily updates, as you heard Paul say. But this was a post from Pollo Del Mar, I guess in the past couple of days here, and Pollo responded with my comment because Pollo was rocking the purple wig and all, and showing Purple Rain, which of course I shared from the Howard Stern birthday party, the Adam Levine live Purple Rain. But you had mentioned a different version of that song. And the reason I bring this up, folks, was because if you see Pollo's YouTube channel, there's a music video that Pollo did with Hit Me With Your Best Shot, which is a very entertaining video if you get a chance to watch. But what was that version of Purple Rain that you had mentioned on social media there?
Yeah, it was Purple Rain by Etta James, the soul and R&B icon and legend, dearly departed. She did an album of covers. I think it was her second to last album of her career in her life. And it's just very unique. You think of Purple Rain, believe it or not, Etta James, a female singer, has a much deeper voice than Prince does. So it gives it a very different feel. But it was one, I loved the Adam Levine one that you suggested. Incredible performance by Adam.
I should clue folks in too with that, because it was Howard's birthday party at the Hammerstein Ballroom of all places, which has plenty of wrestling history. But the backup band was Train.
Really? So
that
Adam
was Train.
Adam Levine's put Maroon 5 aside for a little bit, performed with Train. By the way, Train, I'm a huge music buff, and so Train has a new dance remix song out that they haven't recorded a lot recently, but they are from here in San Francisco, so I always keep a finger on their career every now and then. So yeah, the Hammerstein Ballroom, great venue, unbelievable, probably in the top, I would say the top 2 venues I've ever worked in as a professional wrestling talent.
Nice. Well,
2300 Arena, I didn't get to work as a talent,
obviously,
but I got to work there, and I think that those 2 are at the top of my list.
Well, I actually just thought about this because obviously you're a historian and such, besides doing your duties as a manager of champions and champion of managers, but also with the NWA.
So great at that.
Yes.
Being a historian allows me to know what's been done and what was successful.
So on the personal side, you told me both publicly and personally, you are an avid collector of merchandise and collectibles and all that stuff. Have you gotten any cool pieces lately?
Well, when I was growing up, I had a collection, and it's so heartbreaking to me that it was lost in a housing issue. I was storing it at my dad's home, and it was largely destroyed. But I had a phenomenal collection of very old school those cardboard posters that they would staple. I would see them stapled to telephone poles back in the day.
Nice.
And I would collect those, and I had programs and from many of the independent wrestling shows that I'd gone to, and autographs from an incredible number of, I would say, underappreciated talents. So of late, I have not gotten anything that is brand new for me. One of my prized possessions, of course, is an autographed beautiful Bobby Eaton trading card. Bobby Eaton, my favorite wrestler of all time. I was gifted by one of my incredible fans and supporters the limited edition Jim Cornette and Midnight Express 4-pack of collectibles. And just today, I was texting with, sounds like mad name dropping, but it just happens to be the case. I was texting with Leilani Kai, former NWA Women's World Champion, former WWF Women's World Champion.
How's she doing, by the way, with the hip?
She's doing great. Miss Leilani is still in the hospital, but she is recovering and coming along very nicely. And she texted me so excited because they're going to be releasing a new WWE action figure of her as part of the Glamour Girls. If the listeners are not familiar with the Glamour Girls, they were, the forebearers of the women's tag team division in WWF at the time throughout the 80s. Miss Leilani Kai, managed by either Fabulous Moolah or most notably Jimmy Hart, was the manager of the Glamour Girls. And for Miss Leilani, that is such an exciting moment because it's her first action figure in a career that spans back to the 70s. And I told her, now I know what my next must-have purchase is going to be, and that's going to be the Glamour Girls set. And she said, I didn't tell you this, Pollo, to make you buy them. And I said, no, you didn't have to tell me that. I'm a fan and I want them for my collection. So
absolutely.
And being a collector, I want to throw this out there, being a collector of these things, I'm particularly excited right now because we're in the middle of the rollout of a Pollo Del Mar collector's card series. There's a trading card series of Pollo Del Mar cards. Each one is named, each one of them covers a different aspect of my wrestling career over the last decade. The first one that came out is actually the second card in the series. They're numbered in terms of like the order that they're supposed to come out. The first card that was released was number 2. It's from my NWA period. It's called NWA All-Stars. And it's the very first promo pic I took as an NWA All-Star. And it talks on the back in the stats about some of my time with Silas Mason. And now there is a 3-pack of my work around California that's available. And that is, one is called the Manager of Champions, the Champion of Managers. The second card is called Queen of the Underground. And the third one is called Money, Power, Respect. So I'm really, as somebody who collects trading cards, not crazily, I don't want to make anybody think that I have a collection of thousands, but I have ones that are important to me. It makes me feel honored and flattered that that first one, the NWA All-Stars card, has already sold 70 cards. And that means that there's 70 collectors out there who think highly enough of me and have been inspired or interested enough in my career as a professional wrestling talent to add me to their collection. Huge, huge honor.
Well, you're going to have to text me where to get that stuff. But Paul Pratt, he's in charge of the digital interface for NWA, and check everything out at nationalwrestlingalliance.com. Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And I appreciate your ongoing support of the National Wrestling Alliance.
Of course. And make sure you either email me or text me where I can get the cards. I definitely want to grab some.
Absolutely. You or anybody who's listening can DM me for more information about the cards on my social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all as Pollo Del Mar fans. You can DM me even on Twitter at the Glamazon PDM. The cards are really pretty reasonably priced. The NWA one is a standalone. It's $12, and that includes your shipping. And then the 3-pack is $27 for all 3. They're all autographed in protectors cases and shipped right to your home.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
Hello, this is NWA superstar, absolute superstar, Big Strong Mims, former NWA World Television Champion and future, let's spoil it, years ahead, NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And you are listening to Crazy Train Radio.